I'm Jake Bruton, and today I want to talk to you about choosing an architect. And I made this big long list of notes, and I'm throwing it out the window, and I'm going to hope that I can remember the couple things that I kind of just mentally came up with as I was sitting here that I realized I was kind of silly for forgetting in the first place. So let's talk about choosing an architect. Let's start with why would you choose an architect? Why would you choose to have an architect involved in the project in the first place? So, number one, there's a reason that all these professions exist. There's a reason why you would have an architect involved. There's a reason why you would have a framer involved. There's, all those things down the road. Let's talk architect. Let's talk, what's sitting in front of me here? I chose to record this in the office today because I was sitting here looking at a set of plans and realized this was a great place to start. It is possible for you to build a project without a set of plans. It is unlikely that it's going to go easily and that it's going to go smoothly and that things will be to scale or that they'll work when we get there or that staircase isn't going to interfere with the bathroom that's over top of it. I had a conversation with a builder the other day that was having that issue. A good architect is going to make your set of plans buildable, and it's going to make your life easier. And we'll come back to that at the end. I also should note, when I say architect, I actually mean architect. There are plenty of great home designers out there. I would by no means ever belittle what Michael Maines does, but Michael's not technically an architect, and he doesn't hide that fact. He's not a licensed architect. He's really good at what he does. But the majority of home designers or interior designers that are choosing to design homes are not as qualified as an architect. It's not a dig on them. It's not a hit against what they do. The architect went to school. The architect went through a licensing process. The architect has learned from a specific curriculum that is designed to make all of this and the building process more favorable. And they simply haven't an interior designer that hasn't been to school or anything like that hasn't done that process. Like I said, it's no knock on them. It's an elevation of the architect. It's not a de-escalation or lowering of what they've done. So that's our starting point. Have an architect be involved. That's the starting point. That's the best opportunity for success is to have professionals involved across the board that are an asset to the project. So how do you decide what architect is going to be right for you? I like to start when I talk with clients about aligning goals. Things like aesthetic, efficiency, durability, health concerns, timeline. You should choose a professional who does what you want or is at least confident that they can do what you want. When I say that, I mean I would not go to an architect who's made a living off of designing barns and ask them to design something super modern unless they could prove to me that they're very interested in that and they just haven't done it yet. I would look for someone who designs the aesthetic that you want. I would look for someone who has a timeline that aligns with what your needs are. I would look for someone, if you're interested in Passive House, that is familiar with Passive House and who has done a Passive House before. It's not to say that we couldn't find somebody that hasn't done one that could be great. I'm telling you the simplest way forward is choose someone who has aligning goals with your project, your process, and what you're wanting out of it. 2. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we want references. I know in this day and age we can look online, we can go to Houzz, we can go to Better Business Bureau, we can go to Google, and we can find what we believe to be an accurate representation of what the professional is. That tells us whether or not they're worth a phone call, in my opinion. That tells us whether or not it's worth reaching out. If the company has 10 reviews, if the architect has 10 reviews and 9 of them suck, I'm not going to call them. If the architect has 10 reviews and 9 or 8 of them are pretty great, then I'll give them a call. And then we go for references from there. We don't give out references. I have to be full and open and honest with this. We don't give out references. The reason that I don't give out references is, number one, I hated pestering people 3 or 4 times a year to tell them that somebody was going to call and ask. And number two, references on our side of the business are silly. You can find somebody that thinks that we did good work, and I'm sure if you dug hard enough, you could find somebody that was disappointed with something that we did. I'm going to give you somebody that ended well and that has called us back for other stuff, and they're going to say nice things about us. So that reference doesn't mean diddly. Now, when it comes to an architect, though, I can call other builders, and other builders won't mind talking to me. I don't have to pester homeowners. It's nice if the architect offers a homeowner, but I don't push for it if we're working with a new one. I want to know builders that they've worked with. And I might not even ask the architect for references. I'll just look and see who they've worked with. I'll figure out who they've worked with recently, and I'll just call that builder. Say, hey, I'm such and such. This is what we do. I have an opportunity to work with this architect. It appears that you've worked with them. I wanted to get some background on what the process is like. As a builder, that's really easy for me to do. As a client, as the homeowner, I think you can do the same thing just about as easy. You might get a little pushback from some builders. They might not want to, divulge the secret sauce, but chances are it's going to be easy for you to come by a couple people that are going to seem open and honest, that will tell you what's happening. And you got to talk about in general, were they helpful? Timeline, cost, how were they during construction? That's a big one sometimes. If we need the architect to change something and they've moved on and they're too busy to help, that could be a real hindrance to the project. So we want to ask, hey, are they around? Did they stop by the job site? Did they answer questions for you? Did they fill those RFIs? Those sorts of things. Both from a builder and a client standpoint. That homeowner needs to be informed too. And I would say as a builder, you should work to help your client find an architect, because then you can have some input in the process, because guess what? You're going to have to work with the person too, not just the client. You're going to have to put up with them. You're going to have to come to terms with what they want. You're going to have to make sure that both of you can be happy in the end. That's a difficult thing sometimes. Okay, so then let's talk invoicing. We're cost plus. The architect is outside of our fees. The architect bills separate. We almost never bring an architect in-house for design build. A client would really have to want that. We work with Steve Basic enough. We could do Steve Basic on a design build. That wouldn't be a problem. We know his pricing well enough. We know what his process is like. I could easily bring him in. Anybody else though? I don't want you under my roof. I want you to stand on your own. I want you to have your own liability insurance, and I want you to be a professional, and I want us to be able to work together in a nice way. So there are a couple different ways that architects bill. Some of them are an hourly, which would kind of just be cost plus, because they're going to bill their hourly rate, and then they're going to put markup on things that they have. Like if they have to run 30 sets of print, they're going to mark that up, because this is not something that's cheap, and it takes up their time to do that, and they'll have ink and things like that there's a markup there probably. So that's the most common way that I've had architects work with us, is on that hourly basis. A couple times we've had hourly with we're not going to go over this number. We know we won't get to that number, but knowing how that works, their number was so high that, we weren't going to get to that number. That number was 30% above anything that we've ever had. So that hourly rate is what we're seeing a lot. There could be a fixed fee. Fixed fee may or may not be right for you as the builder or as the client, the homeowner. I will warn you that the reason we don't do fixed fee is because I don't want to ever get to a situation where we're like, oh, hey, we got to get this done today or we're going to start losing money. What we want is an opportunity to just do things the right way at all times and understand that the clients can trust us, and that we're not here to make their life cost more or more difficult. We're going to be as expedient as we can, but we're going to do everything absolutely correctly. It doesn't mean that it's an open checkbook. We're still trying to track everything. We're still trying to make sure that they know where we're going to be, those sorts of things. But that fixed fee, I've had twice now an architect say, well, you're going to have to get somebody else to do the cabinet drawings because I'm already out of my budget. Well, can't you just have the lumberyard do all the beam sizing for you? Can't you just have the lumberyard create the window package? What is the architect doing if they're not going to give us rough openings or center of openings? Or if you just drew some windows and then you asked us to figure out what size the windows are, you didn't do your job. So that's part of your fixed fee. You should have done it. I don't like that method. I would rather us just all have the freedom to do everything correctly and have the client's best interest in mind. And then the last way that I don't really see anymore, that I used to see a lot more pre maybe 2010, is the percentage. And this is still a thing in commercial as well, but on the residential side, it's died out in our market. The percentage is based off the percent of the cost of the build. So immediately I say, okay, well, I mean, that makes sense. The bigger the build, the more pricey it is, the more details we're going to need, the more time they're going to have invested. However, my one example for not doing it, I realized that this is one example, this is one bad experience. I had an architect in the Columbia market working on a commercial project with us. And this is, like I said, this is 2010 maybe. And I get a copy of the plans and I see that the ceiling tile that's spec'd, the 2x2 acoustic ceiling tile is spec'd. I've never heard of it before. And so I go to our local ceiling supply store and I say, hey, walk me through this. I don't know this. What is it? And he says, oh, it looks just like this, but it's from this other manufacturer. We stock this one, but we'd have to special order that one. We almost never use that one because that one's like $65 a tile, where this other one is 1/10 that or less. I don't remember the numbers exactly. It was an order of magnitude difference though. It turned out to be, it was like a $40 difference in a 2 foot by 2 foot ceiling tile. So a $10 a square foot difference on the cost of the building for the entire building because of the ceiling tile. And I went to the architect and I said, here's the one you spec'd, here's the one they stock. Can you tell a difference in them? And he kind of looked at it for a minute and he said, what do you mean, can I tell a difference in them? And I said, to me, they are aesthetically exactly the same. And they are both from reputable manufacturers. They are the same material. All I can tell is that one of them is $40 or $10 a square foot more expensive. So I want to know why we're using the expensive one when we could use the cheap one. And he said, I'm billing on percentage and I'm making the decisions and we're using the expensive one. And I thought, that's ripping the client off. There's absolutely no reason for that to happen. If you can give me a reason, and this is what I said, if you can give me a reason why this one is more appropriate, other than it costs more and you're billing on percentage, then I am happy to do this. Otherwise, I have to take this to my client and say, we can't do this. And he said, that one's better quality. And I said, okay, how? And he said, it just is. And I went straight to the client and said, we're not using the expensive ceiling tile that architect spec'd. I'm going to save you $10 a square foot on the project. And they're like, oh, okay. And that I never worked with that architect again. I totally hosed that architect. I violated our, professional agreement to try to work with each other and to work with the client's best interest in mind. In that case, it trumped the architect relationship. I'm okay with burning a bridge on somebody that's going to treat their clients like that. But that's a tough one. So if we're doing the fixed fee, or a lot of times the hourly, how do your payments to an architect break out? Normally you have a deposit to get work started. Most architects, if they're very organized, they'll have an initial meeting with you and then they'll go, if you want to work together, we want to work with you. Send us money and then we'll participate in calls, conversations, and start thinking about your project. That's a totally fair way to do it. Normally that ends up being 5 to 10% of what the total project is. You have another 25% in SD schematic design when we work out what the floor plan is going to look like, a couple little elements here and there, just to try to suss out what the details are. You'll normally spend another 30%, somewhere in there, 25 to 35% in design development and really narrowing down on things. And then that last chunk will come with construction documents. There's another 40% or something like that left over at this point. But you need to understand you're paying for intellectual property. You're not going to get final construction documents if you withhold payment. They're going to go, okay, well, they're mine until you pay me, so it's fine. So you need to understand that, as with any professional, prompt payment is a good idea, and that makes all of your relationship with that builder or that architect or whoever that much more profitable in the long run, because if they know they can count on you to write that check when that invoice comes, then they know that they can be expedient and that they can work hard to get your job finished. And most of all, I think the big thing here that we sometimes forget is, can I spend 3 years of my life with this person? Can I spend 9 to 12 months developing a design, and then a year and a half building a house, and then go through them hanging around and trying to get final photos for their website? Like, can I spend 3 years of my life talking to this person, working with this person? Are their ideas outrageous? Is their personality over the top? It's the same as choosing a builder. All of the things matter, but please don't forget about personality. And I would say most people can get that in the first 1 or 2 meetings. If you have to pull a second meeting with the architect and just say, I'm not sure that we're ready to pull the trigger, but we're trying to figure out if you're right. Do you have time to meet one more time? We have a few more questions. Ask them a bunch of questions. If they get frustrated with you for asking questions that are legitimate questions, maybe they're not going to be fun to work with. If they're very open to all of this process, maybe they'll be a little easier to work with. You have to think of it as if they're a subcontractor, because they are. You're paying them to do a certain part of the job, and the whole goal of hiring them is they're going to make your life better. They're going to make the house live better in the end. They're going to make the house easier to build, or they're going to give plans to the architect that are informed enough that it makes it easier to build for the architect, and it's going to be what you want in the end. They're a subcontractor. Treat them as if you're interviewing a sub. What's it like working with you? Can you tell me some people that I can talk to that can tell me what it's like to work with you? And am I going to be able to get along with you? An architect is a very important part of the process. They are the first step to success. If you have a poor relationship, if you have a poor quality architect, the whole process from there out is based off of these drawings and these specifications. You got to get it right from the beginning. And I always tell people it is easier to figure out on this piece of paper with the architect sitting in their office working on it than it is when myself and 3 or 4 of my crew members and a subcontractor are standing there trying to figure out what in the heck they meant. So let's figure it out on the design so that it can be in the budget, so that it can be in the build, so that the project can be successful. Thanks for watching today from the Aero Building offices, or you might know it as the Unbuild It Podcast Studio. The Unbuild It Podcast is a podcast that Steve Basic and Peter Yost and I do. We record in this room. We release a couple times a month, and we have a whole video series on our YouTube as well. Make sure that you sign up for the newsletter. There's 2 of those a week, and they tell you all about what's going on the Build Show Network. You're going to miss stuff if you're not getting this email that lets you know everything that's going. Till next time, thanks for watching.